Up through my head. How can I not rush in? Look at this. Oh, ha! Sigura!
This is a 36-year-old man named Marcus Arduini Monzo. He was excited about something he just received, an online purchase that had finally arrived. But this wasn't a book, clothes, or anything ordinary that people order every day. Marcus was unboxing a samurai sword, a 60-centimeter blade. On the morning of April 30th, 2024, 14-year-old Daniel Anjorin put on his headphones, just like every single day. He was walking to school in Hainault, London, probably thinking about his classes, maybe listening to his favorite music. Daniel was a bright boy, loved by his family, a devoted Arsenal fan with his whole life ahead of him. Those headphones would become the reason he couldn't hear the desperate screams of neighbors trying to warn him, the reason he never saw the man with the sword approaching from behind. This is the story of 22 minutes that turned an ordinary Tuesday morning into a nightmare that would shake London to its core. Hainault is the kind of place where people know their neighbors, where children walk to school without fear, where the biggest worry might be catching the morning train to work. Donato Ewul was 33 years old, just trying to get to work at his job at the co-op store. He was walking along the street when a gray Ford Transit van came speeding toward him. The impact was devastating. The van struck Donato with such force that it sent both him and the vehicle crashing into a garden, smashing through a fence and slamming into a concrete post on laying close. But this wasn't an accident. The driver, Marcus Arduini Monzo, was just getting started. Marcus climbed out of the wrecked van with injuries to himself. He approached a woman nearby and asked her a question. "Where am I?" Then, he reached into his trousers and pulled out a sword, a 60-centimeter samurai blade that gleamed in the morning light. What happened next would haunt witnesses forever.
So this guy, and he just randomly hit me with a van. But I kind of saved myself. I didn't panic straight away. So I kind of tried to predict at least 20%. But even so, if he still got me with the van, I survived. Then I was on the floor for a couple seconds or a minute. I don't really know how many, the time frame I was down. So I just wake up, I was like, you know what, it's not today. I had myself, I was like, it's not today. My survival skills kick in. So I saw this guy, I went to him, I said, are you okay? He didn't talk to me, he was angry. I said, yeah, I need to kill. I was like, huh? Who are you killing? And like, hello, obviously. And I said to him, you okay? Then the next thing I saw a samurai sword.
Marcus turned back to Donato, who was already hurt from the van crash, and slashed at his neck with the sword. As he attacked, he shouted his intent to kill. Somehow, miraculously, Donato managed to escape. But Marcus wasn't finished, not even close. 15 minutes passed, and the injured were trying to understand what had just happened. Marcus was moving through the neighborhood now, sword in hand, looking for his next target. He found it when he forced his way into a family home. Inside, Henry de los Rios Polania, 35 years old, was sleeping peacefully next to his wife Cindy and their 4-year-old daughter. It was still early. They had no idea that a nightmare was about to walk into their bedroom. Marcus burst in, sword raised, and asked them a question that would echo through the courtroom months later. "Do you believe in God?" He swung the sword at the couple. Henry, acting on pure instinct, threw himself between his family and the blade. The sword sliced deep into his arm and hands as he fought to protect his wife and child. But then, the 4-year-old began to cry. That sound, the sound of a terrified child, seemed to break through whatever was driving Marcus. He stopped. He looked around the room as if seeing it for the first time. And then, he left. Henry was severely injured, his hand so badly damaged that, but his family was alive. His quick thinking and courage had saved them. Marcus, however, was still out there, still armed, still dangerous. And his most devastating attack was yet to come. At Bancroft School in Woodford Green, teachers and students had no idea that one of their own was walking into the path of a killer. Daniel Anjorin was making his way to school, just like he did every morning. He was wearing his headphones, lost in his own world. Residents who spotted Marcus approaching began shouting warnings. "Look out," they screamed. "Behind you." But Daniel couldn't hear them. The headphones that were such a normal part of teenage life, the headphones that millions of kids wear every single day, meant that Daniel had no idea what was coming. Marcus approached from behind, silently, deliberately. What happened next was so brutal that even hardened prosecutors struggled to describe it in court. Marcus delivered what they called a devastating and unsurvivable chopping injury to Daniel's neck from behind, causing what forensic experts would describe as a near decapitation. Then he stabbed the boy in the chest. Daniel Anjorin, just 14 years old, collapsed on the street. His young life, full of promise, full of dreams, was ending just meters away from the school. He was rushed to the hospital, but the injuries were too severe. Daniel's parents would later describe him as their loved and amazing son. They spoke of their devastation, their complete inability to understand how such evil could touch their family. But the attack wasn't over. As Daniel lay dying, police officers were racing to the scene. They knew they were dealing with an armed and extremely dangerous individual. They knew that every second counted. PC Yasmin Margaret Meckham Whitfield was one of the first to arrive. She saw Marcus with the bloody sword and did what police officers do. She ran toward the danger. Marcus attacked her immediately. He struck her 3 times with the sword, causing what doctors called significant injuries that nearly cost her her hand. But PC Meckham Whitfield didn't retreat. Despite her wounds, despite the pain, despite the terror of facing a man wielding a sword, she continued to pursue Marcus. Her bravery was extraordinary. Inspector Malloy Campbell arrived next. He too was stabbed in the hand as he tried to apprehend Marcus. Later, he would describe the encounter as frightening, but said his focus remained on protecting the public and stopping the attack. Marcus was trying to escape now, climbing over gardens and garages, shouting and swearing as he ran. At one point, witnesses heard him call out, "Is there anybody here who believes in God?" The same question he had asked in the family's bedroom. The same twisted theme that seemed to be driving his rampage. But the police weren't giving up. More officers were arriving. The net was closing. At 7:22 a.m., 22 minutes after the first screams had pierced the morning air, Marcus was cornered in a resident's driveway. Multiple tasers were deployed. A large number of officers tackled him to the ground. Finally, the nightmare was over. As Marcus was handcuffed and arrested, the true scope of what had happened began to emerge. 1 child was dead, 4 others were injured. A community was in shock. But who was Marcus Arduini Monzo? What could drive someone to commit such random, brutal violence? The investigation would reveal a man in the grip of what appeared to be severe mental illness, but also someone who had made choices that led him to this moment. Marcus was 36 years old, a dual Spanish-Brazilian citizen living in Newham, East London. On social media, he called himself a mystic and musician. Photos showed him wearing medals from Brazilian jiu-jitsu competitions. He was trained in martial arts, physically capable of the violence he unleashed. But his family noticed changes in recent months. His brother Eduardo told investigators that Marcus had traveled to remote retreats, first to the Amazon, where he consumed ayahuasca, a powerful hallucinogenic drug, then to India for more spiritual seeking. When he returned, he wasn't the same person. Marcus began withdrawing from his family. He meditated for 10 to 20 hours a day. He slept on the floor. He refused physical contact, especially with his mother. His brother said he was not the Marcus I knew and had started talking strange. The investigation uncovered more disturbing details. Marcus had been following a YouTube spiritual guru named Sadhguru, but then burned a picture of him, claiming the guru was a demon who put a spell on him. On the morning of the attack, prosecutors revealed Marcus had smoked cannabis, adding to what they called his self-induced intoxication. But perhaps most chilling of all, just weeks before the attack, Marcus had made a video on his iPhone. The date was April 4th, 2024. In it, he was unboxing a samurai sword, the same type of weapon he would use to kill Daniel. In the video, he described the weapon as freaking sexy. And there was something else, something that showed the depths of his disturbed state of mind. Before the attacks, Marcus had killed and his pet cat, named Wizard. While investigators worked to understand Marcus, the community was coming to terms with an unthinkable loss. Daniel Anjorin wasn't just a statistic. He was a beloved son, a student at Bancroft School, a passionate Arsenal FC fan who brought joy to everyone who knew him. His parents released a statement that captured their devastation. Daniel was their loved and amazing son. They spoke of the impact on his siblings, the hole torn in their family that could never be filled. The response from the community was immediate and overwhelming. A GoFundMe page raised over £150,000 for Daniel's family. 300 people attended a vigil at Hainault tube station, lighting candles and sharing memories. Even Arsenal Football Club, Daniel's beloved team, paid tribute. During a Premier League match against Bournemouth, fans displayed a banner reading, "R.I.P. Daniel," and observed a minute of applause in the 14th minute, matching Daniel's age. But Daniel wasn't the only victim whose life was forever changed. Donato Iwuli, the man who was struck by the van and slashed with the sword, somehow survived what prosecutors called a remarkable escape. But the trauma of that morning would stay with him forever. Henry de los Rios, Polania spent nearly 10 hours in surgery to repair the damage to his hands and arms. His quick thinking had saved his family, but at a terrible personal cost. PC Yasmin Margaret Mesham Whitfield faced months of recovery from her injuries. The woman who had run toward danger to protect others now had to rebuild her own life. Inspector Molloy Campbell, despite his injuries, spoke of his determination to continue serving the public. These weren't just victims of a crime. They were heroes, people who had faced unimaginable terror and found courage, sacrifice, and the will to survive. On May 1st, 2024, Marcus Arduini Monzo was formally charged with murder, attempted murder, grievous bodily harm, aggravated burglary, and possession of bladed weapons. But the legal battle was just beginning. When the case reached the Old Bailey, Marcus's defense team argued that he was suffering from diminished responsibility. They claimed he had a psychotic disorder with schizophrenic-like symptoms and delusional beliefs, that he and his family were in mortal danger. Marcus himself claimed to have no memory of the attack. He spoke of having an alternative personality, a professional assassin. He told the court he believed the earth was flat and that 9/11 was probably a conspiracy. Delusions, he said, formed after his travels and drug use. But the prosecution, led by Tom Little KC, argued something very different. They acknowledged that Marcus may have been suffering from mental illness, but they said it was self-induced through his drug use. The ayahuasca in the Amazon, the cannabis on the morning of the attack, these were choices Marcus made. They pointed to the evidence of planning, the video of him unboxing the sword, calling it freaking sexy, the killing of his pet cat, his acquisition of the weapons. Most importantly, they argued that Marcus had a clear intention to kill during those 22 minutes of terror. The question for the jury wasn't whether Marcus committed these acts. He had pleaded guilty to possessing some of the weapons. The question was whether his mental state diminished his responsibility for murder. If they believed the defense, Marcus might be convicted of manslaughter instead of murder. If they sided with the prosecution, he would face life in prison for taking the life of an innocent child. As the trial continued, the Hainault attack raised difficult questions that extended far beyond one man's actions. The attack occurred during a period when knife crime in London was reaching record highs. It happened just before the mayoral election, where violence in the city was a major issue for voters. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak condemned the violence, saying it has no place on our streets. Even Buckingham Palace released a statement saying the king's thoughts and prayers were with those affected. But beyond the political responses, there were deeper questions about mental health care in Britain. Studies had shown a rise in the proportion of violent crime perpetrators diagnosed with serious mental illnesses like schizophrenia. Was the system failing people who needed help before they became dangerous? Marcus's family had seen the changes in him. His brother knew he was talking strange. But what support was available? What could have been done differently? The intersection of mental illness, drug use, and violence created a complex web of responsibility and causation that the legal system struggled to untangle. Daniel Anjorin's death demanded answers to these questions. His family deserved justice. The community deserved to understand how such a tragedy could happen. As the legal proceedings continued, one truth remained constant. A bright, innocent boy was gone forever. Daniel Anjorin had been a student at Bancroft's school. A school that had already experienced tragedy the year before when another student, Grace O'Malley Kumar, was killed in a stabbing in Nottingham. Daniel loved Arsenal Football Club. He was described by his family as amazing, loved, cherished. He had siblings who would grow up without their brother, parents who would never get over losing their child. His funeral was held in Ilford in May 2024. The community that had rallied around his family continued to show their support, proving that while evil had walked among them for 22 terrible minutes, love and compassion would endure far longer. The £150,000 raised through the GoFundMe page was a testament to how Daniel's life had touched others. The vigil, attended by 300 people, showed that his memory would not be forgotten. At Arsenal's Emirates Stadium, when fans held up that banner reading "R.I.P. Daniel" and applauded in the 14th minute, they were doing more than honoring a young supporter. They were declaring that a life cut short still mattered, that a boy's dreams still counted, even if they would never be fulfilled. As this documentary was being completed, the trial of Marcus Arduini Monzo was still ongoing. No verdict had been reached on the most serious charges. Whatever the outcome, certain facts will never change. Daniel Anjorin will never come home from school. Donato Woolley will carry the scars of that morning forever. Henry de los Rios Polania will live with the memory of fighting for his family's life. The police officers who ran toward danger will remember the weight of their injuries and the courage it took to keep fighting. It reminds us that evil can appear anywhere, at any time, that ordinary people can become heroes in extraordinary circumstances, that mental illness is a serious issue that needs attention and resources. If you've made it this far, please consider subscribing to the channel so we can bring more such cases into the light. Stay safe and be aware of your surroundings. Thanks for watching.